My talk this evening is going to be about the future of well-being. But before I do that, I think it's only appropriate. Before I go into that, I think it's only pertinent and relevant for us to look at what's happening in the world today. If you're going to address well-being on a big scale and talk about its future, I think it's only appropriate to see, is it realistic to even think that there's a future? At this moment, 50% of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. At this moment, 20% of the world's population lives on less than $1 a day. 99% of the world's economy is controlled by less than 1% of the people in the world. There is war going on in every continent. There is terrorism everywhere. Climate change seems totally irreversible. You've seen the disaster in Uttarakhand. You've seen what's happened in Kashmir. Well, the bad news is it's going to happen more and more, especially in countries that have poor infrastructure. So war, terrorism, social injustice, economic injustice, extreme economic disparities, and a world that is ravaged through eco-destruction. Can we really authentically even talk about the future of well-being? So I'd like to start, sorry to start on such a depressing note, but the world is in crisis at the moment. Not just you and me, but everybody. Our children, our grandchildren are in crisis, are going to be in crisis, because the next 3 decades will decide what our future is. And unless there's a change within each one of us, a very, very radical shift in each one of us, unless there's a critical mass of that change, I don't think, seriously, there's any hope for humankind. So what I want to do is paint a rather big, holistic, global picture of what the current state of knowledge is about the nature of, somebody said reality earlier, and I'd like to expand on that and how that can mean a possible solution for the future of our collective well-being and our personal well-being. So right now, if you go to Google, or you go to any reasonably good website, and you type in what are the open questions in science. Open questions means we do not know the answers. Scientifically, we do not know the answers. The number one open question in science, and there are about 125 of these questions that scientists are looking for answers. The number one question in science is, what is the nature of the universe? What is the universe made of? The second open question in science is, what's the biological basis of consciousness? And there are many others. What is the relationship of our genetic structure to our personal well-being? How is memory stored in the brain? Is memory in the brain? How is memory retrieved? These are very important questions. What's in the center of the earth? Are there other universes? Is there life on other planets, etc., etc.? So we can go on and on about what we do not know. But I'd like to start with just the first question. What is the stuff of the universe? What is the universe made of? And the answer is as follows. 70% of the universe is a mysterious force called dark energy. And dark energy is expanding the universe faster than the speed of light right this moment. So the distance between galaxies is spanning, and we have no idea what it is. 25 to 26% of the universe is an entity called dark matter. And the reason it's called dark matter is that it's invisible. it's not atomic. It does not reflect light, it does not absorb light, it does not emit light. And the only reason we call it matter is it's responsible for most of the gravity in a galaxy. So we live in the Milky Way galaxy with the solar system, and the gravity of our solar system and our galaxy is this mysterious substance which is not atomic, which is transparent, and we have no idea what it is. This leaves only 4% of the universe which is atomic, made up of atoms: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and so on. And this includes the entire universe. 4% is the entire universe, which is regular matter. This microphone is made of atoms. Your body is made up of atoms. This is made up of atoms. It's 4% of the universe. The problem is, of this 4%, 99.99999% is still interstellar dust, which means it hasn't formed stars, hasn't formed galaxies. So the visible universe, which is hundreds of billions of galaxies, and each galaxy has hundreds of billions of stars, and stars have planets around them, and today we are told trillions of planets. In fact, there are 10 to the power of 60 billion so-called habitable planets, which means with biospheres that astronomers have identified in our own solar system, not in our solar system, in our galaxy. And of course, there are other galaxies and hundreds of galaxies. All of that is 0.01% of the universe, 0.01%. The rest is unknown and unknowable in many ways. Because how do you interact with something that's not even atomic? And everything we know is atomic, including our own bodies, our own brain. Okay, the mystery of the universe, 0.01% is atomic and visible. Now the problem with that is that even that atomic universe is made up of particles, subatomic particles, and of course people are trying to figure out what these particles are, but once you get down to the essential nature of particles, you find they are waves, and unlike particles, waves are not material. So waves have no location in space-time, and waves have no units of mass and energy. And if you look at regular atomic matter, which I said is 0.01% of all the universe, essentially it boils down to nothing, because atoms are particles, particles are waves, and waves are emptiness. So what's the nature of the universe? Emptiness. It's an infinite void, number one. It's not material. That's the fundamental conclusion. The universe is not a material entity. The second open question, and I could go on about the other questions, but let's just address the second open question in science. What is the biological basis of consciousness? Because we assume that consciousness is produced by our brain. Where do our thoughts come from? Where does imagination come from? Where does creativity come from? Where does insight come from? Where does intuition come from? Where does free will come from? And there's no biological basis for this. No one can tell you in science how a thought is produced or how an image in consciousness is produced. So if I ask you right now to imagine a red rose, can you imagine a red rose? Do you see a picture? Where's the picture? If I go inside your brain, there's no picture of a red rose. There's only electrochemistry. Okay? Or I ask you to imagine the sound of your mother's voice. You can hear it, right? Or remember your favorite song. Well, there's no way we can identify a biological basis for that. There's no electrochemical that actually produces that experience. But it's even more distressing because when you say, what is the color of that sign, you'll say red. Well, what's coming to your eyes from there is dimensionless photons. Photons have no color. Photons have no dimension. Photons are waves, and they hit your retina, they produce electrochemistry, they produce something in your brain, electrical phenomenon, but you don't experience electrical phenomenon, you experience a three-dimensional world in space and time. How does that happen? We don't know. Okay, so the two most fundamental questions of existence, we don't know the answers. And there are many more, but the two most fundamental questions. What is existence? And how do we become aware that we exist and the universe exists? We don't know the answers. That's very significant, isn't it? That we do not know what existence is, and we do not know how do we know that we exist, or how does anything exist. We don't know. So this is in science today, these are called the hard questions. They're called the hard questions, the hard problems, because there's no theory. If there was a theory, then at least we would say how to look at the problem. And you know, the way science is done, you have theories, you design experiments, you make observations, and then you ask other people to do them, and if they have the same results, you say, this must be true. But for the hard problems, what is the nature of the universe and what is the nature of consciousness, we have no idea. Okay, so when you don't have a solution to the two most fundamental questions of our existence, it may be that we are asking the wrong questions. And so for 30 years, I have been a student of Vedanta, and I've been a student of Kashmir Shaivism and the Advaita traditions of India. And if you really went to the great rishis and seers of India who spoke about these problems in antiquity, they would say you have the hard problem because you're asking the wrong question. Okay? That you are looking at a bottoms-up solution to something that has a top-down solution. The universe is consciousness. And of course, you've heard the word, Brahman. And the universe is experienced as Brahman. So both the material universe and is consciousness, and the origin, the source of the universe is consciousness. Brahman, Brahman. Okay, and if you look at the models of reality in biology, in the human being, then if you've kept up with this literature, we are supposed to have a physical body, which is called Sthul Sharir. We have a subtle body, which is called Sukshma Sharir, and we have a causal body, which is called Karan Sharir. And so you begin with Karan Sharir. Karan Sharir is Jivatma and Brahman, and of course we've heard the expression, Brahman is Atman, and Sthul Sharir is mind, intellect, and ego. The physical body is Pranamaya Kosha and Anamaya Kosha, which is the physical expression, and that expresses itself as the universe. So instead of asking these questions and using a bottoms-up approach, if you reverse the whole scheme, that consciousness is fundamental, and consciousness projects itself as an individual soul, which then projects itself as the mind and the body and the intellect, which then projects itself as the vital energy or prana of the body, which then projects itself as the physical body, which then through the five senses projects itself as the physical universe, then we have a solution. And this solution is not a metaphysical solution, it's not a philosophical solution, it's actually a solution that can be proved mathematically, that has basics in science, and that has huge implications for the future of our well-being if we pay a little attention to it. So this is the most fundamental question that people have asked. Okay, Sri Ramana Maharishi spent all his life asking this one question, who am I? And well, you could go deeper into this and say, who's asking the question, who am I? And modern science has looked at this in a very classical world. There's me and there's the world out there. Okay, and this way of looking at the world is called reductionism. Reductionism means I am separate from the universe that I'm perceiving. And this worldview is now collapsing. Based on this worldview, we've created reductionist science, which has created climate change, which has created mechanized death, which has caused ecological devastation, the extinction of species, and now risking our own extinction. Unless we have a radical shift in this fundamental view and recognize that, in fact, we have to reverse the whole thing. We are an expression of the universe, and the whole universe is in me. Prakratim swam vashtbhai vishrajami puna puna. Going back within myself, not my ego, not my mind, but my fundamental consciousness. We recognize that the universe is in consciousness, that the mind and the body are in consciousness, that the whole world that we experience is in consciousness, where everything is inseparably related. And if we then go from here, which I'm referring to as the top-down approach, then we see that consciousness is creating everything that we call reality. Consciousness creates the notion of the individual ego self. Consciousness divides itself in the subject of experience, the object of experience. Consciousness is experienced as our feelings, emotions, desires, thinking, perception. It is our biology. It is our personal relationships, our social interaction. It expresses itself as the natural world. It is the universe. This is the fundamental science that needs to be understood in order to solve every issue that we have in the world right now. Whether it's climate change, or war, or conflict, or racism, or bigotry, or prejudice, or social inequality, any problem we have is solvable through a new science and a deeper understanding of that new science. Okay, so when we look at quantum physics today, what we are told is that the fundamental nature of the universe is a field of possibilities which collapses through attention and intention into space-time events that we call reality. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna refers to himself. He says, I am the field and I am the knower of the field. Kshetra, kshetragya. I am the field and I am the knower of the field. I meaning consciousness as fundamental that expresses itself through qualia, which is a new term I know for most people here. Qualia means qualities of consciousness that are units of consciousness. So just like quanta are units of measurement, qualia are units of consciousness. A thought is a qualia. A feeling, an emotion is a qualia. An image is a qualia. A sensation is a qualia. In fact, if you want to remember easily, this is the acronym, SIFT, sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts create experience of everything. So right now you're experiencing me as an image in your consciousness. You're experiencing me as a sound in your consciousness. You experience your own self as a body in your consciousness. And furthermore, these are experiences that are constantly transforming. So if we begin with this idea, then we have an emerging paradigm. An emerging paradigm means that we have a completely new way of looking at what we call fundamental reality. The first one, which is of great interest to me right now, is called genetic indeterminism. Genetic indeterminism means your genes are not your destiny, which is what we've been taught in medical school, in biology, molecular biology, that your genes are your destiny. First, let's look for a moment at what is a gene. Okay? Everybody talks these days about DNA. The word DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. Genes are the alphabet of life. Okay, so there are only 4 letters to the alphabet: adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. These are the 4 letters of life, whether it's a potato, and by the way, a potato has more genes than the human being. Okay, 98% of your genes are the same as a monkey. 82% of your genes are the same as a mouse. 65% of your genes are the same as a banana. So what's the difference between one form of life? It's how the alphabet creates the language. Okay, in English we have 27 alphabets, and you have libraries. You have books, you have epics, you have libraries, but nature is even smarter than any human language because it uses only 4 alphabets. With those 4 alphabets, the entire life of our planet is constructed, which is whether it's plants, whether it's microbes, whether it's animals, anything that has life, only 4 letters. That's what DNA is. A gene is how those letters are strung together to create a word. Okay, so in English you have short words, long words. Similarly, a string of letters that constructs a word is called a gene. And the human genome, there are about 23,000 genes which make up your body. Okay. We used to think that these genes are fixed. So you have a gene for heart disease, you have a gene for cancer, you have a gene for whatever. And so when the genome was discovered, it was thought that now we'll be able to solve all the problems, all the illnesses through genetic engineering. Well, it didn't happen, even though the genome was discovered now 12 years ago, because of this thing. Your genes are not fixed in their expression. Your genes respond to every experience you have. So every thought, every emotion, every feeling, every personal interaction, every social relationship, every environment, every kind of food that you eat, it influences the activity of your genes. So it's not what you are born with, but how you deal with it. You're dealt with a deck of cards. How do you play that deck of cards in your life that determines the behavior of your genes? In fact, I work now with one of the #1 geneticists in the world, and basically he agrees with me that genes are the record of our ancestors, and even going back to animal and human ancestors, and our own karma. Genes are the record of karma. If by karma we mean the choices that have been made by us, by our parents, and their parents, and their parents, going all the way back to the origin of life. But as you see here, your karma is not fixed. In fact, what you have to do is either transcend your karma, or transmute your karma, or transform your karma through a proper understanding of choices that we make that express those genes. Similarly, there is the field of neuroplasticity, which was the theme of my last book, Superbrain, which I wrote with a neuroscientist. And Superbrain simply means that you can rewire your brain for physical well-being, for emotional well-being, for spiritual well-being, and for influencing how, sorry, can we go back? And for what I call influencing the biological markers of aging. So your aging is flexible, relatively speaking. You can have a biological age of 40, even though your chronological age may be 60. That your age should not be the date you were born with. You have much more control over the aging process. And this has led to new fields now that scientists are looking. Quantum biology, quantum entanglement, and I won't go into all this because there's not enough time for us to discuss all these different things, other than the fact that if you understand that consciousness is fundamental, you can change your biology, you can change everything that we call reality, everything. Okay, so the little summary of what I've told you so far. This is the new order of the universe: 70% dark energy, 25% dark matter, 4% invisible atoms, the rest hydrogen and helium, interstellar dust, and all other visible atoms, the entire universe, 0.01%, which would not be obvious if we didn't have consciousness, because all of matter and energy is being generated in consciousness. So a good way to illustrate this is if you had a big chocolate cake. Most of the chocolate is dark energy. The frosting of the chocolate is dark matter. And then the tiniest pinch of cinnamon at the top of the cake is stardust, which created the entire universe, which would not be possible, and this is not to scale, were it not for consciousness, which makes all this possible. Okay, so this is a good way, I think, to think of how the universe is constructed.